And so looking at step one, when you're auditing your current spend, you want to start with a bird's eye view. How much are we spending every single month, and how much revenue are we driving? In this particular example, this company does incredibly well with paid media. They're spending upwards of almost 100,000 in some months, and their ROI is above 1 on their spend. So this means that they're breaking even on their paid media spend in the same month that they're spending those dollars. Now, obviously, in B2B companies with larger sales cycles, having an ROI like this is quite unlikely. So you want to figure out, am I making 10 cents on every dollar that I invest for paid media? That's still pretty healthy because I know that I'm paying back my investment within a year. Or conversely, are we making only 5 cents for every dollar that we invest? And at that point, it ends up becoming a point of risk for the business. And so being able to look at it a bird's eye view, is paid media performing well or not? And what is the ROI that we're seeing? And this is basic level data. Whether or not you have detailed multi-touch attribution set up, you can at the very least have a high level idea of how much money you're putting in and how much revenue you're getting out of it, so that you know roughly is this channel profitable for us or not. Number two, you want to look at your channel analysis. So once we understand on a monthly basis if we're profitable or not, you may want to look at specific channels to see which ones are working and not working. So this is a company that's far earlier in its journey on the paid media side, and you can see that they're spending about $14,000 on Google. They got about 9 leads, 24 demos. A bunch of them became opportunities, and 2 led to close 1. And pretty good ROI on that, given that they spent $14,000, they closed about $22,000 in revenue. So solid ROI, and they're breaking even well within their payback period benchmarks. Similarly on Capterra, they're spending about $6,000, $15,000, $16,000 back. Solid ROI that's worth scaling. And then you can see on LinkedIn and Facebook, they're not nearly as profitable. So while it's earlier days for this company, this is something to keep an eye on to see which channels overall perform well for us and which ones don't. And one of the common questions we get asked is like, well, how do you measure Google versus LinkedIn versus Facebook? Because Facebook is usually a last touch, not a first touch. And sometimes people watch a video on Facebook and then come through branded search, and then Google ends up getting the credit. All of those things are definitely true. I think starting off with a basic report like this can give you a pretty good idea, rough idea of what's working and what's not. And then you kind of need to triangulate the truth with additional data points where, for example, maybe on this $2,000 in ad spend on Facebook and LinkedIn each, maybe you got hundreds of thousands of views on certain videos and you see branded search spike for you. So you may want to come back and revisit the numbers at that point. But in general, you should have a pretty good idea of what's happening from a basic report like this. Then you want to look at your specific campaigns. What's working within a specific channel and what's doing well and what's not. This is an example that we've used before within Google Ads, where this company is spending about $270,000 a month on paid media. And there are some campaigns that are performing far better than others. So you can see that on this far right column. Maybe a little difficult to see, but it says pipeline plus close when invested. And in this case, there are some campaigns that are returning 5x or 4x or 2x. And there are other campaigns that are only making 38 cents on every dollar that's invested. And so immediately those become opportunities to either reallocate and optimize. For example, here, they're spending about $83,000 on this keyword cluster and getting 38 cents on the dollar back. Whereas comparatively on a different campaign, they're spending, on this one, they're spending about $9,000 and they're getting $5 for every dollar invested back on a 12-month basis. So reallocating that spend to this campaign makes a ton of sense. And without doing this exercise, it's very hard to identify where those reallocations or optimizations need to happen. There are also places where you likely, instead of reallocation, need to tweak and test and optimize. So in this case, you have this campaign that's spending about $37,000 and getting about 81 cents on the dollar back, which is actually not that bad. So in this case, it might be that we need to change our ad copy. It might be that we need to change our keyword clusters associated with this ad. It may be that we need to change our landing pages to improve conversion rates, or even looking at our down funnel experience for that particular set of keywords. Do they have a different nurture streams, or is the sales team reaching out in time? Whatever that is. But if this 0.81 can be bumped up to 1.5, immediately this becomes a campaign where we can reallocate additional budget. Similarly, in this company, if we look at their spend at a campaign level, you can see that display retargeting is not doing anything really for them. There's no pipeline, even though there's a bunch of MQLs. So it seems like they're getting low quality leads here. Conversely, if we look at some of these late funnel campaigns, they're doing incredibly well, particularly this late funnel C campaign and well, the branded campaign is more obvious, but looking at the late funnel C campaign, they've generated about $500,000 in opportunities on $90,000 of spend, and they've also closed $252,000 out of this 519. So almost a 50% conversion rate to close one. And so immediately this campaign becomes a place where you want to put even more budget than the $90,000 per month that you've previously allocated. And so then the question becomes, well, how much more should we invest? And depending on the channel and the campaign type that you're looking at, the metrics to measure to identify the room to scale are different. So particularly with search, a really good indicator is search impression share and what percentage of time are you in the top 4 results for paid media, and how much of that is being lost due to budget versus rank. So that late funnel C campaign that we see here, where $90,000 is being invested, this company's only showing up in the top 4 results 68% of the time. So a very quick win here is to get this number up to 90-ish%, and you would immediately see a ton of more conversions and a ton of more pipeline, and likely even more close won deals. If you were to think about a similar metric for paid social, that might be looking at ad frequency. So if you've identified a list of contacts or prospects that you're targeting, how frequently do they see your ad? Are they seeing it once or twice, or are they seeing it 10 or 12 times? If they've seen the ad 10 or 12 times, you're probably at more of a saturated state with that audience than if they've only seen it once or twice. If they've seen it once or twice and it's incredibly profitable for you, that becomes a campaign that you want to put more budget into so that they see it more frequently, are able to engage with it. And then over time, if it gets to that saturated point where they've seen it 10, 20, 30 times, you need to change up the creative, change up the offer potentially to get the same audience into a different stage of the funnel. So here we're using search as the example, but the same principles apply in different channels.